it has become difficult, but maybe it will also lead towards having much more higher quality data, more accuracy that you can base your decisions on. So maybe in the short term, it's going to be painful, but in the long term, it will actually pay off.
So we've been working together now for about a year, I think. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
definitely a year.
That's crazy how quickly time has gone by. Um, so I remember, yeah, last summer when we were trying to recruit the first person to our little business, and I think you were actually the first person we even talked to. We had like a lot of probably around 10 interviews or something set up, and then we had you as the first person we were supposed to talk to. And then after the interview, we were both like, okay, I think we want to hire him, but we should still talk to the other people.
So did you talk to them
So
or did you just hire me?
yeah, no, we did the interviews and everything. So we had them like set up, and there were a lot of good people in the mix. And but yeah, we just sort of both felt like I don't know, you were sort of the easiest person for both of us to talk to and work with. And uh, what was more unique about you, I think, was also the fact that you're specialized in analytics. That's why we're here today as well. I wanted to talk to you about this GA4 migration from universal analytics. And I don't know, in my experience, it's been really hard to find CRO people that do analytics really well or who are specialized in analytics. Because nowadays it seems like analytics people are completely their own breed almost, and CRO
Yeah.
is trying to be a separate thing from that. So,
And they are though, I would say. I mean, they are difficult, well, not difficult, but different. And but some part definitely there's always a crossover in this digital online marketing world. So CRO, you do need analytics. Analytics need CRO. I don't know about that. But definitely because you need insights from analytics, you need to know the tracking is working fine and data is of good quality so you can make decisions based on that. So I would say, yeah, definitely they do go hand in hand, but it also looks like a lot of people are moving towards analytics specializations and like separating them completely, which I don't mind personally. Also happy to be working with you guys for almost a year now. Glad that I was able to get in the mix or basically able to make that interview and then work with you guys. I do find it easier working with you as well. It doesn't feel like I'm working with some old bossy people, micromanaging or anything. So
oh,
that
thanks.
yeah, that's definitely something that works for me. Call me selfish or whatever, but I guess eventually we ended up with a win-win situation on both sides. And here's to working more years as well, and hopefully seeing Qualitative grow into a much bigger, robust CRO agency that you guys want it to be.
Yeah, it's definitely tough to go from, just us to like bring in more people and delegate stuff that you're not used to delegating, and even finding that right fit and all that is just like a lot of pressure. But yeah, so far it's been really interesting doing that sort of business development side of things, which we haven't really done before, right? But can you give a brief background of how you got into analytics and what do you, I don't know, what do you like about it and what do you specialize more specifically in?
So yeah, definitely. My favorite topic. Basically, as you know, there is no specialization or degree for analytics like a lot of people have for data analytics or business analytics or even data science and that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, it looks like digital analytics kind of gets umbrella under the umbrella of all these bigger names or buzzwords, so to speak. I started in Google Ads and digital marketing somewhere back in 2018, no, sorry, 2017. And someone talked about conversion tracking, and I was like, what is that? Because I was just doing Google Ads, Facebook ads, and that sort of stuff. I knew about SEO because that has been very saturated for quite some time and never really liked it. Nothing against SEO folks, it's just that I find it very slow and something that doesn't maybe attract me very easily. Hard work as well, to be honest. So yeah, kudos to you guys, SEO folks out there. But yeah, I moved. I saw analytics when I was looking at ads performance and different sort of data and connecting and trying to make audiences at that time. And I was like, this part of internet sparks joy, that meme. So
Oh,
that
cool.
part, yeah, that part wasn't sparking much of a joy. And then I discovered GTM. I was like, wow, this is some cool stuff there. And the thing with GTM is you need to be a lot more technical with it, even though you don't have to be a programmer, but you need to know a lot of technical stuff. And I used to be scared about, like using GTM and there was
Most
not a
people
lot of
are.
expertise. I don't blame them. I still am some days, so yeah. It's always sometimes every day you're learning something. There's a specific peculiar problem you're stuck with, and you uncover something that you're like, it's such a eureka moment for you. So that's when I decided, you know what, this is cool stuff. How can I move into analytics? It's not easy to make that transition, obviously, if you worked for some time in Google Ads and stuff like that. And then I also worked, or when I moved to Dublin, Ireland, I also worked a little bit in influencer marketing. Definitely hated it. I'm sure influencer marketers do a hard job, but I think like it's hard to deal with people too much. Um, and it takes a lot of effort to find right fit and that sort of stuff. So I've explored quite a lot of areas, and after that, I've decided, okay, it's analytics where I want to stick to. And then obviously within analytics, you've got like the implementation side with GTM, and then you've got the analysis side, and it's moving towards BigQuery, SQL, Looker Studio, previously known as Google Data Studio. So that is how I got into analytics when I got my job at Paralyze. That is a CRO agency as well. And they gave me a chance to work in analytics. They're like, you know what, let's start with analytics. So I did some of UX research part there as well, qualitative research, and then there was a lot of quantitative, which was analytics. I've learned a lot. Um, and this is how I transitioned into analytics. And within analytics, I generally lean more towards GTM side, but then it looks like with GA4, Google does want you to now venture into BigQuery, SQL, etc. if you want to do analysis. So I didn't know that might be the next thing I want to learn. Um, yeah, good luck to me for that.
Cool. Yeah, so you've explored a lot of different areas, and I think that's why you probably gravitated towards CRO as well. And I remember the first time we met you, you were like, "Oh, I want to,
Yeah,
learn more about the research and that kind of stuff, how that ties together with analytics," which again is like pretty rare. I think usually analytics people are not very interested in that side of things.
sure.
But yeah, for today, so the overall topic is Google abandoning marketers with this analytics switch, right? That we're all kind of pushed into at the moment. And there's obviously a lot of discord about that online because it does influence everyone. And there are a lot of people who are talking about this, making content. And my sort of impression right now is that a lot of that content is very specific and technical. I just watched the other day, Juliana Jackson and Charles Farina did like a deep dive into what has changed inside Google Analytics 4 in the past year, which is super interesting and useful for people who are power users, right? Who have been doing stuff in there for the past year. But the more I talk to other marketers and CRO people who are not, specialized analytics people, it seems that people still don't even know where to start from with this GA4 stuff. And that's just so interesting to me because the news has been out there for like a couple of years now, right? Like, I
Yeah,
think I took my first GA4 course in 2021 or something.
yeah,
But at that point, it was really hard to even convince anyone that it's going to be a problem. And now when you go into your Universal Analytics account, you see this scary countdown clock, right? And
Yeah,
I mean, we have to talk about the countdown clock because that's just so funny to me
doomsday
how
clock. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
doomsday countdown. Yeah, definitely scary.
mhm. Yeah, so as of today, when I look at my analytics account, it says you have 45 days, 12 hours, 34 minutes, and 30 something seconds until the property will stop processing data starting July 1st. So I don't know. The funniest part to me is how they made it so dramatic that they included even seconds.
I mean, every second is important. I guess they really want to focus and intensify that. Listen, guys, your data is important. It's going away, and people are still not getting the signals. I mean, because there are a lot of people who have not switched over. Or I've talked to some people who weren't even aware of the date that is nearby now. That is the 1st July 2023. As you mentioned, for the free customers, obviously the 361s have a year more. Of course, they pay, so they've got a bit of more a favor by Google. But yeah, I mean, I guess Google is trying every way, giving these notifications, that those annoying banners that never go away. You keep clicking on closing them, and they keep coming back. So yeah, I mean, it does look like they are a bit dramatic with that, but I guess they're trying really hard to get your attention. They're like, please listen to us, already move. But the thing is, I think the system is a bit confusing as well because some clients you talk to, they're like, we've already moved or migrated to GA4. Why do we keep seeing these notifications where it talks about the migration or the move to GA4, we've done everything. And there was also this automated one that was coming a couple of months ago that started as well, that if you do not do it, we will do it for you, sort of thing. And I think people weren't happy about that as well. So you need to actually go and opt out of that. We'll talk about it in a bit as well, like why that was a problem. But coming back to your question, has Google really abandoned marketers? I would say they haven't really. They're trying really their best to help you out, but in that helping you out sort of things, they've made it a bit more difficult. Let's be honest. They've made
Yeah,
it quite complicated.
yeah, there's just so much to unpack on this topic. Like, I feel like we could probably talk about this for like 3 days in a row because
True.
we're so into
True.
it right now.
Yeah.
So one thing with the countdown clock is I don't know if you saw this, but I saw somebody actually developed a Chrome extension that lets you disable the countdown clock. Yeah, so I'll try to find it and link it down below like later, but I thought that was like pretty funny too, but might be useful to some people. Yeah, obviously if you've already made the switch and you're more of a power user and you know how this stuff works, you don't need to see this scary countdown clock every day, right? But I
Right.
also made a post about that and some people commented that yeah, it is super annoying that if you think you've already done everything correctly and set it up in the right way, and then you get this scary notification, then it gives you this unnecessary anxiety and like, why are they
Yeah.
doing this to people who have already made the switch? But then I sort of agree with you that I think that Google knows that there are way more of those users who are not power users, who haven't even maybe heard that there's going to be this huge change. So they really need to target that group specifically and make it as, dramatic as possible.
Yeah, definitely. It reminds me of that funny video as well. It's about like how GA4 is, like coming, the sunset video.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
pretty
that
sure
was
a lot of
amazing.
people have been seeing that. Yeah, it's pretty funny as well, like how it's dramatic as well. I love that. I think people should actually make that sort of content as part of their strategy as well to, like reach out more audience. But yeah, I think a lot of people are covering a lot of specialized topics, but there are people who are, whenever they see GA4 user interface, they're like, whoa, where do I find those reports that I had in Universal Analytics? And they just close it and they go back to their UA property. So I think that has been a problem, that people, that I've also discovered quite a lot of time that is happening, and it's happening quite a lot. In the beginning, obviously everyone was, but there's a friction. You're a zero person, so there's a friction towards change. It's not easy to change something that you've been doing for years. A lot of people started to mimic events the way they were in UA, but GA4 works differently. But gradually, people obviously who are power users or who use it a bit more than the average people's, average Joes that we have, they for them it's easier to get into analytics compared to someone who just does CRO work. Their specialization is more towards experimentation. When they come to GA4 or UA to look for data, they're like, "Well, how do I create segments? Where the hell is that?" So a
Well,
lot of thinking, a
like
lot
one
of
of
cognitive load.
the yeah, that's definitely true, but I think it's also, well, one of the crazier parts about this is that, we've been working in CRO for, I don't know, about 5 years or something, and we've seen teams who have had specialized people and budgets allocated towards building up that universal analytics account for years to get it to up to a standard so their marketers could actually work with that data, right? Like people have done years of work to build up this platform for their companies, and now it's just, taken away basically, and you have to start from zero. And the other side of it is also that we've had so many clients who have been struggling even working within UA, because it's kind of funny how people say that, GA4 is so much more complicated and whatever, which it is, but the reality is that most of our clients, they don't even really know how to use segments properly in universal analytics, and we have to start from there because I don't remember who it was who said that quote, but it was somebody from analytics. I totally forget that. Basically, the average or sort of let's say beginner users of Universal Analytics operate on the left side of the menu, like just clicking through the all the like acquisition behavioral reports and stuff. And
Yeah.
then the intermediary users operate in the segments, and then the real power users, the real analytics people operate in Excel spreadsheets, right? So they pull the data out and do their own stuff.
That is true. Yeah, I do agree with that. I think I've been on the beginner side for sure. Just clicking through stuff back in 2018 and wondering what's happening. It's cool stuff, but what do I do with this data? There's a method to this madness as well, which you learn obviously over the years, and once you're thrown into the open sea and learn to swim, sort of thing. And yeah, I think that's the problem. I think a lot of people maybe I agree that it is like you've spent so much money, time, energy to build something, the whole data system, and all this way cleaning it up for marketers to use, cleaning it all for your audiences. But then GA4 comes along and you're like, oh, we need to move to a different model, and it whatever your concepts are, you kind of need to relearn that as well because the definitions have changed a little bit here and there. But I also think, I guess it's my perspective as well, and I'm sure there are many people who would agree with that, that it also gives you an opportunity to, with a clean slate, basically, you start use the whole measurement strategy, think about it again. Because a lot of accounts are tracking stuff that is useless. It doesn't really need to be tracked, or the
Mm-hmm.
data is still kind of messy. So now you have a chance to start again, which happens in years. And I think it's a very good opportunity for a lot of accounts and people to just clean up, start again, and this time make a promise to yourself that you'll have good analytics set up, so that your marketers are not scratching your heads or CRO people are coming in and they're not like, what the hell? What's happening here? Oh my God, I need a break, sort of thing. As an analytics people, we do love some mess in there because I mean, it's our job to go in and clean it up and obviously do some tracking and implementation, that sort of stuff. But it
Mm-hmm.
definitely is a learning experience for everyone. I do think that it has become a bit more complicated, especially for small business owners or people who would be able to go into analytics themselves and use it. Um, for them to move to GA4 and then obviously issues like GA4 has some data retention limits and it looks like Google really wants you to use BigQuery, so you need to move to cloud storage. It's generally free for a lot of people because of the tiers that Google has set up. You don't have to worry too much about paying for Google Cloud or BigQuery, but that also requires specialized skill if you want to do SQL stuff. And analysts are not cheap. So as a small business owner, I'm thinking, how do I do all that marketing stuff and now I need to worry about this data stuff as well? But on
Yeah,
the plus side, good for us analytics, more work for us. If I may say that with an evil laugh. But yeah,
yeah.
that works out.
So one thing I want to mention about BigQuery is that I think uh, s- definitely some people don't realize is that so there's just like a lot of talk around, oh, BigQuery, whatever, it's free, you can just do that, use that to do a lot more stuff, and it's powerful and cool and whatever. But BigQuery itself is just a data warehouse, right? So if you send your data there and log in there and open BigQuery, you don't have anything, right? Like it doesn't give you reports automatically. You still have to do all this extra labor, as you said, or have somebody who is very specialized who can use that to give you the reports that you, as a marketer or a CRO or whoever, can actually use for your job. So in that sense, it has become like so complicated and like a bigger process overall where you need to bring in more of these specialized people because it's not reasonable to assume that a CRO or a marketer will go in and just off the bat know how to do all this data analytics stuff, right? Because it has become so much more difficult.
Yeah, I agree with that actually. And I also think that also then brings in a bit more focus Looker Studio that if people weren't using it as much before, now they would because you can get around sampling and these other issues in BigQuery and then connect that to Looker Studio and then create your dashboards, those pretty interactive dashboards, colorful, that people want to look at rather than just some raw data or tables in BigQuery.
Hmm.
Um, it has become difficult, but maybe it will also lead towards having much more higher quality data, more accuracy that you can base your decisions on. So maybe in the short term, it's going to be painful, but in the long term, it will actually pay off. I hope so.
Yeah,
That's my thinking.
this is like a really good point actually, because I was just going to bring that up that even working within Universal Analytics for years, my main thing has always been that I don't know if I can really trust what I'm looking at there because every client that we start working with has some sort of implementation and tracking issues. And it becomes this whole thing where they hire you to do the cool CRO stuff or research or whatever, but you can't even really do your job until you verify the implementation and the setup and make sure that what you're looking at is actual customer behavior rather than tracking issues, right? And that's where it becomes problematic because I think a lot of people also don't realize how much time and resource verifying even tracking setups and all these things like takes. It's a whole different scope of project actually, and but you can't get around that. You have to do it if you want to make any sort of reasonable conclusions based on the analytics data that you have, right? So that's where I feel like you need to have these specialized people at this point who really go in and because I don't really want to get involved in that as well. My thing with CRO, main thing has always been qualitative research, and I do use analytics data, and I think I know enough to make conclusions out of there to tie it together and to make, I don't know, suggestions and come up with test ideas and improvements and whatever. But I really want to work with people who go in first to verify the setup, tell me that it's okay, that the data is pretty much good to go, and now you can go in and do your thing and sort of look at the reports and make some conclusions, right?
Yeah, that's true. And people who work with analytics, they always know that it's never going to be 100% accurate anyways, but at least be close to reality somewhat, and that's good enough. Like you can use that then as representative data that you can use to make your decisions on. But the problem is that a lot of people never really paid attention to analytics that much. I feel like part of this whole digitalization or revolution is that now analytics is coming gradually, like becoming an important part. A lot of people never really thought about it. It was just another tool. Just go in there, look at the bounce rate, stuff like that. Again, those metrics you can manipulate very easily. So now I think people are getting into it a bit more to understand, okay, what's happening. And I feel like with this bit more complication, Google is definitely giving a lot of other tools a good chance to get some of their market share as well. You see a lot of other analytics tools coming in and talking about how GA4 is difficult or bad and why you should use their tools, and they do make some good points. It's just that a lot of people do prefer to use Google Analytics is also because you stay in the whole ecosystem of Google products or Google marketing platform, so to speak. So you've got your like 360 products, those video and display ones, then you've got Google Ads, Analytics, BigQuery, Looker Studio, all these together. So it makes it easier for you to work. Obviously, a lot of people do work with Google Docs as well. So I would say that's part of that ecosystem. Um, and as much as it's become difficult, I think it's a time that you can deal with some pain now and rest later on, and at least have confidence. Because I think the biggest problem with any data is, can we trust this data? And that is an issue I've faced myself, and I've seen a lot of people across the board in different marketing roles or CRO roles or growth marketing or digital marketing or Google Ads, is how much can we trust, can we put in this data? And if you have to make decisions on data, and there's a lot of data-driven buzzword going on since a couple of years now, then that data-driven decisions, those decisions need to be actually backed by somewhat real, true data. Obviously, if it doesn't match 100%, that's understandable. And I feel like hopefully we are moving closer to those times when we can have a bit more faith or trust in the data. And as a lot of people say in CRO industry, that you should make decisions based on data. And CRO itself is just data, like you're experimenting. There are these statistical, formulas and concepts that are underlying under the hood, so to speak, of these tools. So data is super, super important for CROs, I'm sure, as it is for everyone else. So thankfully, analytics is becoming an important part. People are talking about it quite a bit. It's been 2 years since GA4 is in the mix of analytics and updates and bugs and whatnot. It has been a painful process. A lot of people have had no hopes from GA4. They're like, oh, Google is not even improving. They've had 2 years to do this or that. You see that on a lot of forums or Facebook groups. And my take is that they have to improve it. GA4 will eventually get much better. If you feel that it is clunky or buggy right now, it is because they can right now fall back on UA. But once that is taken out of the mix, there is no more UA, then hopefully, that is our hope, GA4 will definitely become much, much more better. I do feel like it is a really good tool overall. It's just that it'll take time to get used to the user interface, especially for the new people or people who don't use it too much, finding stuff where you want to, building those custom reports, aka explorations now, rather than having everything as a standard built-in report. Obviously, it comes with some weird limitations in some areas and some really cool stuff in some areas, and I feel like they're working on it, and hopefully it'll get better eventually to use. Yes, it has become complicated to conclude this part of a topic, I would say, but there's a lot of opportunity for us to learn and grow, clean our data, and have that accuracy in data that we can use towards our decision making, whoever you are, CRO or SEO or digital marketer.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting also because I have seen a lot of people now advocate for just completely separating yourselves from Google Analytics as well and actually going to a paid tool. And yeah, we don't really work with a lot of those other paid tools because it seems that at least our clients or people that work with us, they still, even though GA4 is so complicated and scary and whatever, they still find it easier to go from Google to Google, right? Rather than start considering a completely new, different tool that they've never maybe even heard of. And maybe it is better, maybe it isn't, but I think psychologically it's still
Yeah.
easier to migrate to Google, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, again, I would use some CRO analogy there that if you're familiar with something, it's easier to move towards that rather than something completely new. So if you change the standard layout of the website, people would not know and they'll bounce very easily and quickly. I think that's the same thing here as well. If you know it's still Google's product, even though it looks completely different and the model, the data model is different as well. So some people said, would you even call it a migration since it's a completely different tool? I mean, it is a migration, but you can say you're just migrating to a different set of tool altogether. So I would say, yeah, it is something that people still feel much more comfortable than going towards those paid tools. And some people just don't want to pay for something that they can get for free. That makes sense as well. Like you have to convince them a bit more to open their wallets and give you their money.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is that even the fact that Universal Analytics has existed for so long in this state of being completely free for most people, it's just crazy because there isn't anything equivalent out there, right? Like you get what you pay for usually. If it's a free tool, there are very strict limitations, and if you want something a little bit more sophisticated, you have to invest in it. So that makes sense, right?
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously GA4 does come with some sort of improvements there. It's not like we have just only issues. You do get native integration with BigQuery, which was only available for 360 customers in Universal Analytics. There's much more better Google Ads integration, um, better cross-domain tracking, so you get a lot more accurate data that is regarding user behavior and otherwise, which you wouldn't get in Universal Analytics. And again, as a CRO or marketer, you want to see or know your user, what they're doing, and base your campaigns on that. Another part of GA4 is also the introduction of machine learning or predictive analytics. And it is not as much explored at this point, but I feel like it will eventually become a big part of the whole analytics game. Like how ChatGPT is something that is AI based and it's textual predictiveness stuff that is working pretty cool. I feel like data is obviously going to be something that is going to follow that road, and that is something that was just not available simply in Universal Analytics, and also it's dumping the idea. So a lot of people confuse this one simple thing is that we used to have event tracking in Universal Analytics with event category, label, action, that sort of stuff. Where is that in GA4? How do I do that? So I think what they've done, this is something that I do like now because all you have is an event and you can send a lot of parameters with it. So those parameters you can customize however you want it. It doesn't have to be event category, action, or label. And you can be as granular as you want to about every event as much as data you want to basically capture. And that again gives you a lot more granularity in data that you can use for your analysis later on. So yes, you do have certain events that are automatically collected, but there are other events that or parameters that you can add yourself, which can make your contextual data tracking much, much more better than it was maybe for Universal Analytics. And another thing is that maybe not today, maybe a few years down the road, you want to move to another analytics tool, which is paid or free. A lot of these analytical tools are event-based tracking tools. So I feel like finally Google has caught up with the world. If you look at Adobe or these other tools, they are event-based tracking models. So I feel like if you want to move to another tool altogether, it'll be an easier transition for you. You've already learned whatever event tracking or event-based data model is. So that again is another angle or way of looking at things that you can use later on towards for your own benefit.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I wanted to also circle back to the more practical, or I don't know, general questions that people who are not that familiar with the whole situation might have. So
Mhm.
let's say you even open your analytics and you see that countdown clock there, and it says that from July 1st, this property is uh, it's going to stop processing your data. So what does that mean in practicality? Like, does it mean I can still go in there and use that historical data, or what does that mean for most people?
So what it does is for most people, especially for free properties, is that Google will stop processing and collecting your data. That is, no more new data will be collected. Funny thing that they're doing it over the weekend, so let the world burn while it is a weekend and people
Yeah,
can
and
download
also
them.
in the middle of the summer when people are
Right.
vacationing in most places, right?
Definitely cool, cool. So while you're vacationing and somewhere cool, nice, and you got people back home are like burning in fire, like what's happening here, what to do with my data, where it is. But yeah, anyway, so it will stop collecting data, but you will still have, at least as per Google, view level access. So you can still go and view that data in your Universal Analytics property for at least 6 months. They haven't given any exact date. My guess is that they might expand this time duration or basically increase it to a year maybe, but you can't bet on that for sure. So it is better to just keep that in mind that you will still have some access to that data, and it will be a good strategy to somehow start exporting something that is too important for you. Um, and if you still have not set up your GA4 basic page view tracking, that is just only track some data that is GA4 can collect, at least you have like a month and a half now. At least you have something to look at in GA4, and then export something with something as simple as just exporting to Sheets or Excel. Just download CSVs to keep like your default channel grouping data, device or e-commerce or something that is important to you, your business. Or you can even use Google's Google Analytics add-on for Sheets and just automatically pull whatever is important for you for the last 6 months or a year. So at least you can use this later on, maybe in Looker Studio or some other dashboarding tool, or just for your analysis within the Sheets or Excel. Um, so yeah, you would lose access after hopefully 6 months, not less than that, hopefully more than that, but not less than that.
Okay, and what do you think is the bare minimum that you have to do to set up the GA4 property? Um, is it correct to say that using GTM for that is way simpler than UA, I think, right? Because you can send the page views like pretty easily.
I would say that's the same. Since maybe I'm a bit biased, but I do like GTM quite a bit. And it's the same with Universal Analytics as well. Just at least send the minimum is install your GA4 measurement ID or your tracking code on all your website pages, and your subdomains are tracked automatically, so don't worry about that. But at least do that. So you'll start collecting data in GA4. Now, some people have WordPress or Shopify and they want to do with plugins with that. Fair enough. As long as you have it as collecting data, you can later on always shift on GTM if you haven't done that yet. The good part about GTM is obviously when it comes to tagging, it's a tagging management system, like many others out there, is that it allows you to centralize all your tags in one place and then you can track a lot more data with a lot more control with the whole cookie consent stuff happening and in most parts of the world. It's easier for you to implement those sort of tracking as well, or conditions and triggers, and when the events should be tracked and when not they should be tracked, sort of thing. So GTM is definitely important and easier. I would definitely advise, but at the very minimum, just send your page views to your GA4 account.
Yep. just set something up now, so
Yeah,
that in a
today.
couple of months.
Yeah, don't
Yeah,
delay, please.
I'm still eager to see what the actual situation is in a couple of months, like how much of a panic it will cause and all of that. Like right now we're just, hypothesizing that a lot of people have not done anything or don't know what's even happening. But in July, I guess it will become more clear of
True.
how big of a problem it actually is.
That is true. And if you've already set up some sort of tracking and you're getting or collecting data in GA4, then it wouldn't be a bad idea to at least at the bare minimum go a step ahead and track one or two of your major conversions as well. Make sure that they're being tracked as well, because end of the day, especially if you from CRO perspective as well or any business, conversion is all you are fishing for. And if you don't see that data, it all the data that is there is just traffic data, really. Even though you can just contextualize it as much as you want, you don't know how many people have converted. So if you can do that, implement it today. Remember, you don't have destination goals or any of that stuff in GA4. So everything is an event, and events that you want to mark as conversions, you can do that in GA4 very easily. So at least one or two of those events or conversion events should be set up as well, so you have some data for that as well. That is advisable, definitely. If it were up to me, I would say by this point, your GA4 should be fully fledged set up and you shouldn't be worrying too much about UA apart from exporting any data that you want to keep and using GA4 more than Universal Analytics.
Totally. And yeah, in terms of how will GA4 influence CROs more specifically, you wrote an article about that a while ago, and I think it's still our most popular blog post on our site. I'll link that down below as well. But it was just interesting to me how well that article did compared to everything else that we post, because it's obvious that people are searching for that information of where to start, how it's going to influence my job. And you did a really good job of breaking it down, like very simply. So do you want to go over a couple of points, like how this new analytics change will influence the CROs more specifically? Because that's, where we operate.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the times when we talk about things, we go a little bit too much in detail and we leave out the simple parts that people are wondering about. So maybe that is the reason it got a lot of traction. I'm surprised as well. But glad it was, I'm sure and hope that was able to help some people out. I think the way it affects is a lot of people are looking at bounce rates. As CROs, people are looking at bounce rate, and you want to look at opportunity to test on. So pages that have a lot of bounce rate, maybe you can improve or do something and move the needle there. And or pages that have low bounce rate is maybe where you can increase more conversions as well because people are engaging with content. So in the beginning, a lot of people weren't seeing, there was no bounce rate metric, and it was later on added by Google. And even so, I feel like it's still not part of the standard reports. You have to go and add it as a metric. It's available by GA4, so you don't have to do anything extra. Just edit your report and add it. So how it's going to affect is, I feel like it gives you some more improved metric over bounce rate at least, and that is the engagement rate. So knowing how many people are engaging or the page that is more engaging makes it a bit more easier as well for you to move the needle for that page rather than a page where people are not interested already. So if I'm bouncing already off the page, it'll be difficult as a CRO for you to convince me to stay there and take the required desired action. But if I'm already engaging with that content or the page has high engagement rate, that means that audience or user is already convinced of something and needs few more nudges maybe, and you just need to remove some blocks or friction points that can help them to convert. I feel like that is an important or more effective metric there. So it's going to be more helpful to CROs there. Apart from that, I feel like the fact that you can go on and create explorations gives you a lot more control, what sort of metrics or data you want to see versus just seeing the basic ones, as you would do in Universal Analytics. It did have a custom report tab up there, but it was never really used as much. I've never seen a lot of people use it. People would just go into standard reports, which is what Google has taken away. It's like taken away that sweet piece of cake and told you to go on and fend for yourself with these reporting things. So standard reports are a bit limited. The limitation is so much that you cannot apply segments as of now on the standard report. So you have to go into explorations. Now, explorations are simply reports of different types that you can create in the explore part of the GA4 property. And that is where you can apply a segment. You can use a lot of filters. You can do a lot more analysis as a CRO person as well. And then again, I think I do talk a lot about BigQuery integration. Now, as a CRO, it doesn't matter maybe too much because you don't do that much analysis. But if you have the ability to have someone who can work in BigQuery for you, or even have a freelancer or someone, whenever you need it, as you might know, that the number of users is approximate in GA4 due to Google's hyper log plus plus something algorithm. So you will never really see exact user count, which is a bit of a problem if you are someone who wants to run um, experiment. So this HLL plus plus, let's abbreviate it, how Google does it as well, algorithm makes it difficult for you. And this is the reason sometimes people see that the data in the rows does not matches the data in the totals because it's approximate count. So again, that plus sampling is something, and thresholding, we'll just talk about it in a bit as well, helps you to counter that sort of approximation. Now, if you want to run tests, you at least want the user count that is a bit more realistic rather than approximated. And that native free integration at least allows you to stream that data or move that data from GA4 into BigQuery and circumvent sampling and thresholding and these approximate user counts. So it is more helpful in that terms. Uh, but obviously you don't have to do that yourself. Someone pulls that data and lays it out in BigQuery for you. And then again, you can connect it to Google Sheets or other tools to get that data in, where you can eventually analyze and use that data to run your experiments. Another part, I think, in terms of affecting or being more useful for CROs is that um, you can have much more better funnel exploration reports compared to what you had in Universal Analytics, where you could compare, where you had like gold funnel report and a checkout behavior report. But this gives you a lot more freedom there where you can see each step. You can make it an open funnel, you can make it a closed funnel, and basically do a lot more customization. So I've seen a lot of CROs using funnel explorations or these sort of reports where they want to see the drop-offs at a certain point, whether it's e-commerce checkout step or a specific page where people are dropping off. So you at least have more data to back that up. And then if you have a bit more robust tracking implemented on a page, you can see what they're clicking before they're exiting or dropping off, sort of thing. So I feel like all in all, it's not doom and gloom for CROs in GA4, and they can use a lot of it towards their own benefit as well, and it's going to affect them hopefully positively. And with a lot of native integrations with it's a year of sunset, so as a lot of people know, that Optimize is also Google Optimize is also sunsetting. A lot of tools are now providing native integration with GA4, so you'll get that event data. Just will have to add for most cases a custom dimension, those in analytics account, and you can see that data as well. So there's a lot of most popular tools are giving you that native integration as well. So I feel like in the next couple of months or a few more months, things are going to be much more better, hopefully for CROs, as long as there are good tracking in place and the data is of good quality.
Yeah. So to sort of wrap up this conversation and what you were talking about, I feel like probably the less technical marketers' heads are spinning even listening to you talk in just in so much detail about what you actually need to do now compared to before to do your job, right? And I think it's fair to say that marketers have had to be technical for a long time now, but now we're just entering this new phase of digital marketing where it's in a completely different level, right? So if there's like one thing to take away from this convo, I would say that companies just need to accept now that they need to hire specialized, skilled people to do this as a separate job. And, we've always been advocating that, analytics is super important. You need to allocate resources to it. You need to have a good base to do the rest of your marketing shenanigans, right? But people have sort of gotten away with it
Yeah.
because Universal was still a little bit more usable. But now you can't get away with it, right? And even if you do learn the skills yourself, are you ready to invest the amount of time that is needed to get these reports that were so readily available to you before, right? So it is a completely different job now, in my opinion.
It is, and within that as well, I remember reading job descriptions years ago where people would just bundle everything together in digital marketing. Oh, you should know SEO, some graphic designing, some Google Ads management, and Google Analytics and stuff like that, and experimentation. Even now, I do see sometimes job descriptions where people are talking about someone who's into experimentation and is also analytics expert, which is kind of like two different things. That someone who's a good CRO can be someone who is good at analytics, but unless they're not coming from analytics background, it's difficult that they're very, very specialized in analytics. So costs are gonna go a bit up as well, but good for analytics people because there are more jobs. Hopefully, they're gonna pop up for people like us. But it also, again, I feel like it's been taken a lot more seriously now, which is good because if you depend so much on important data, then you need to have people or that make sure that the data that you have is of high quality and you can make decisions based on that rather than just winging it yourself and hoping for the best that whatever you're tracking is good. Like there are conversions being tracked twice, or the data is inflated or underreported or overreported. That sort of data when you use to make decisions for experiments, especially I think nerds in A/B testing or a lot of other, they would really hate it, and I understand why they would because you're like going completely against the whole stats or maths and everything that is involved in that. So that is a takeaway. Another takeaway I would say is like it's a bit more generic one that the change is always inevitable. It is difficult to move to something new, but the sooner you do it, the better it is, and hopefully it'll get easier for you later on. And it is in your own best interest to do it today than, I don't know, 2 months later. And there will be some panic, some fires to put out come 1st of July. But let's see that on 1st of July.
Yeah, I agree. So take your data and analytics seriously, hire people who know what they're doing, and just accept that this is an initial stress investment that hopefully will make your job
Yeah.
easier in the future.
And don't be scared. It's okay. GA4
Yeah,
is not a monster.
it's gonna be
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. It's gonna be fine. Definitely.
Okay, well, thanks so much for jumping on and sharing your analytics thoughts today. And yeah, I'll see you.
Sure, definitely. It was fun having, thank you for having me here, having this chat, and maybe we'll talk more about certain events and things later on that are more useful for CRO people that should be tracked in GA4 once things are a bit more smoother and people have realized and accepted the reality that is GA4. Remember the doomsday clock.
Okay, bye
All right,
everyone.
bye.